One of the things that I stand by is that I would or I do personally use Simply Love Studio preferred vendors for needs in my everyday life when I can. For example, I've worked with Nick Ratliff Realty Team on buying and selling a home. Wes Brown Photography has photographed probably a half a dozen of my family events over the years. I don't accept every vendor that is interested in being a preferred vendor because I always want it to be the right fit for Simply Love and for them. While having a GLP-1 provider as a vendor has crossed my mind, it was just another thing on my to-do list that got moved to the next day, then the next day, and the next day, and you get the point until Trisha Caldwell, nurse practitioner and owner of Farm Sourced, reached out to me in November. As a recent bride herself, she went through the dress shopping and alteration process and understands firsthand how often health becomes part of those moments. This will be a two-part series. In this first episode, I'm actually going to share my personal experience on a GLP-1. It isn't something that I have openly talked about or shared on social media really at all. Honestly, I just didn't want to hear other people's opinions. And in part two, I chat with Trisha about her background, some of the success stories that she's witnessed, the difference in name brand prescriptions versus compound GLP-1s, and more. No matter if you have been on a GLP-1 for a while or if it's something that you are considering, there's probably several things in the next two episodes that you will be able to relate to.
Hello, and welcome to Season 4 of the Wedding Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Burton, wedding concierge and owner of Simply Love Studio, coming to you from the heart of Central Kentucky. Around here, weddings are more than a single day. They're about family tradition, a little bit of chaos, and a whole lot of love. And my job is to help you navigate all of that with clarity and confidence while staying on budget. At Simply Love Studio, I help couples plan their weddings for free, connecting you with the right vendors, realistic timelines, and thoughtful guidance so that you can enjoy the process. This season, we're diving deeper into real connections, what works, what doesn't, and how to plan a wedding that truly feels like you. Whether you're newly engaged, deep in planning, or just love a good behind-the-scenes wedding story, you're in the right place.
Have opened social media or even turned on the TV in the past 4 years, you have heard the term GLP-1 mentioned. I had a health and weight loss clinic reach out to me in early November, and the owner of it was actually a recent bride, and she realized during her planning how GLP-1 had kind of, I don't want to say affected the wedding industry, but changed the wedding industry. I'm going to have a podcast episode with her following this one, but I actually wanted to share my experience with a GLP-1. This is actually not something I have talked about really honestly at all on social media. I have a few friends that are on GLP-1s and we talk about it, but I feel like they have been judged so heavily over the past few years that it's easier just to be silent and to not even try to debate with someone. I just wanted to kind of share my experience. I'm not an influencer. I'm not being paid to talk about this. I just want to share what it's like being on one and how it has kind of changed my life. I saw a TikTok the other day and I saved this because I was like, this is absolutely literally how I feel. It said, respectfully, if you weren't on Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, or LA Weight Loss before the age of 18, then I don't want to hear what you think about being on a GLP-1. And for me, I feel like that pretty much sums things up for me because I remember being in probably first or second grade, maybe third grade, somewhere in that time frame, and asking my mother why my friends were skinny and I wasn't. I remember having that exact conversation, but I was always probably the heaviest one in the class. I remember whenever in fifth grade that everybody had to get weighed. I don't know why we had to do that. And then I remember in fifth grade, we had to run a mile in PE when we never ran at all. It's like, oh, today you're going to run a mile. Of course, I was always the last one in, but who really wants to run anyway? And it was 20 degrees outside. Growing up in a small town where everybody drank Mountain Dew and you went to McDonald's. We did not have gyms. I don't think we had a gym in my hometown until I was probably junior, senior in high school. And at that point, it was only for like the rich people. We did have a country club and there were tennis courts there. And I remember also thinking that was always for the rich people too. So, like, physical fitness wasn't really anything that was important in a small town unless you went to the local country club or if you played basketball. Because basketball at the time, literally for females, was the only, even males, and football were the only sports that mattered to people. I remember being in high school, and there's actually a documentary about this program. I don't remember what it's called now, but it was through the church. And basically, you met at a church once a week and you did a weigh in, and you talked about how Bible verses related to food, that kind of thing. So I feel like food has always been a part of my life. And it's something, as someone who is not skinny and will probably never be skinny, like, it's something that you think about literally every single day of your life. So fast forward, I started working out with a personal trainer probably 12 years ago. So we'll say I was 28, 29. And I started working out with a personal trainer 2 to 3 days a week. And then at some point, I was like, well, I'm not losing any weight, so let's change my diet some. So I changed, started eating a lot more protein. That was when protein, we found out we were supposed to be eating all kinds of protein. So I did that, and then that wasn't working. So I was like, let's do a vegetarian diet. And while obviously that's going to be probably less protein, especially not from meat, like, you couldn't go through a drive-through that way. Like, you had to be strategic and to plan your meals and stuff. I did that for about 9 months. And then over time, I did get more strict with my diet and my protein intake. And at one time, I was going to a trainer 3 days a week. And I actually had a personal chef that came to my house every Tuesday. She bought my groceries and she came to my house and prepared all of my meals for the week. Now, I did not eat grilled chicken and broccoli for every single meal. I like to at least taste my food still, but it was substantially better than anything that I could personally ever make, you could ever get at a restaurant. While it wasn't flawless, it was still healthy. And with my dog that passed last year, we would walk about an hour every day. It was usually 2 to 3 walks, and they were usually 20 to 30 minutes each. And when I say every day, it was every day. I slid in the ice. I fell down outside. We were out there, rain, sleet, snow, and honestly thought I was going to get struck by lightning at some point because we would be out there and it would be lightning. But she basically would tear the house down if we didn't go walk. We walked no matter what. So at that time, I was going to the gym 3 times a week minimum. And then I had a personal chef that literally came to my house. We bought all of the bougie stuff. She went to Whole Foods to shop. And then I was walking my dog. And that was actually the heaviest I have ever been, was during that time frame. That was no eating out, probably one-ish Starbucks every 2 days. And my drink there is 200 calories. So it's not like a 700 calorie drink. And like I said, that was the heaviest I had ever been. And that was when GLP-1s started becoming more popular. And I remember seeing the first TikTok about GLP-1, and random regular person had gone to the doctor, and the doctor had mentioned that there was a shot available. And I was like, well, that's weird. And I was like, no, I don't really like shots. I don't know how I feel about giving myself a shot. But I also took allergy shots for probably 20 years out of my 41 years of my life. I'm not scared of shots. I just didn't know about giving them to myself. I started following it, and then it was kind of the point where, like, I don't know what else to do when I'm working out. I have a chef. I'm counting macros. I'm eating an ungodly amount of protein where, like, it's hard to even put your eggs in your mouth sometimes. So it was like, okay, let's ask the doctor if I can try a GLP-1. I went to my primary care, and that was in January of 2023 when I started. And I started on Ozempic, the name brand, because we didn't really know about compounding at that point. At least I didn't know about compounding. I didn't even know that was a thing. And of course, my insurance did not cover it, nor does it cover it to this day. I am not saying this as a flex or anything. I'm saying this as someone who was desperate for any type of solution. It was $850 a month. That makes me nauseous to say that, but it worked. And I will say that with Ozempic, which is a semaglutide, can I tell you the difference between all the different things? Not really. But I can tell you how they affected me and what they did for me. I would say probably within 4 to 5 weeks of being on Ozempic, I could notice a difference in the inflammation in my knees because I have rheumatoid arthritis and I had a knee injury from like 2019 ish. I literally ran up and down the stairs one day and I was like, hold up, wait, what just happened? And then I started putting it together. As far as side effects, I did have some nausea with Ozempic, and I started carrying some ginger chews with me. I mean, I don't know the proper name. They're just like ginger bites. You get them in the checkout line at Whole Foods or on Amazon. I will put those in the description so you can get them. I literally kept them in my purse, in my car, on my desk, anywhere that I existed. Those were with me, and they made a world of difference. They were super cheap. I did notice that in the first couple weeks, I did have a lot of fatigue. And apparently, that's fairly normal just because you went from eating a normal diet to where you're not eating near as much. Because I had just gone from having someone in my home cooking my meals and preparing my meals to I ended up not working with her because I knew that I would not be eating as much. The first couple of weeks, it really takes a lot to get used to what's happening, and the wildest thing happened. I didn't know food noise was a thing until a GLP-1, until I started taking it. Like I just assumed everybody's brain was that way, that you're thinking about your next meal while you're still eating your meal, or you're like, oh, it's time for a snack. Or the food noise is a real thing. I don't even know how to explain it, but literally with Ozempic, like I would eat a meal and then I didn't think about food for 4, 6, 8 hours until I started getting hungry again. I didn't need a snack. I didn't think about going to the kitchen while I was sitting at my desk. It was the wildest thing. And if you've never experienced that, then you're a very lucky person. On Ozempic, I started it January the 23rd of 2023. And I took it through November the 4th of 2023. That was basically when all of the shortages started happening because everybody had started taking it and it was basically impossible to get. So during that time, from January to November, I lost 34.6 pounds. That number on the scale probably put me back to where I was probably 10 years ago. And that was when I had just started going to a trainer and I was doing Zumba 3 to 4 times a week. I was walking the dog. Like I was very active at that point. I was watching what I ate. On Ozempic, I lost 34.6 pounds. I was thrilled with that. And after that, I then switched to Zepbound. On Zepbound, I don't want to say a lot less side effects, but because I didn't really have a ton on Ozempic, but I definitely had some. With Zepbound, I've had zero nausea. And truly, I really haven't had any side effects. I have definitely learned to keep in my protein so that I'm not fatigued. And I typically always take my shot at night right before I go to bed. Everybody can do it differently. That's just what has always worked for me. You're supposed to do it every 7 days. In the beginning, it would get to, when I was on Ozempic, I would get to day 7 and I was still My appetite was still very curbed. So I would wait until like day 9 or 10, especially for what it cost. So I would drag it out as long as I absolutely could. When I switched to Zepbound, I started at the lowest dose and kind of worked my way up. Bound was $550 a month instead of $850. And it still makes me nauseous to say that. I don't want to say I picked up a second job, but I definitely added some work to my plate so that I could make sure that I had money to afford that every month. That's a sacrifice. I don't have children, I don't have a family to support. Like that's the only way that I was able to spend that amount of money. There are apps out now where you can track everything. When I first started, there were not apps. So definitely look into those where you put in your like starting weight and your dosage. That gives you some really cool statistics. I feel like at this point, I don't want to go back in and put in any of my data from previously. I just keep up with everything in my notes. I would say I am down probably 65 to 70 pounds total. I have actually gained about 10 pounds in the past year. Whenever I got back from Turkey last year, that was the lowest the scale had read, and I was so pumped for that. In 2024, I spent probably about 5 weeks in Europe, but split amongst 3 different trips. Between those 3 trips, I actually lost 11 pounds combined. If that tells you anything about the difference in the food there versus here, and that was in Paris. I was eating pizza because that was the closest to our hotel. It was freaking amazing. In Turkey, we ate incredible food. Because we were traveling, we weren't washing everything that we ate, but we weren't necessarily eating trash food. I have pretty much been at about the same weight since this time last year, probably right at, which really sucks, especially for paying as much as I have been paying. And the other thing, I do have to keep this in mind. I did start Pilates mid year last year. I had done it with Danny from First Sense Lexington in 2024 and really enjoyed it. And then our schedules got too hard to mix together, and then she had a precious little baby and it was even harder. Then I started going to Club Pilates with Lindsay Calico. I will say that there was actually, the reason I started back is there was a TikTok one day and the girl made a TikTok about how people over 200 pounds should not be allowed to go to Pilates. Like, WTF. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. So you're judged for being overweight, but then you're judged for also going to work out. So which one is it?
You're 200 pounds, you shouldn't be in a Pilates class. There's no reason why they should allow 200-pound people in a level 2 class. You shouldn't be allowed to be a Pilates instructor if you have a gut and you're fat.
That reminded me, I was like, hey, I liked Pilates. Why am I not going to Pilates? I text Lindsay and I was like, hey, I want to do Pilates with you. I've been going once a week with Lindsay and she kind of kicks my butt. There was one week where I couldn't walk for about 4 days. And anytime I've been to my trainer and we do kind of the same thing, I don't like either one of them. But I do think that I have gained muscle from that. I know that I have, because although the scale hasn't really moved any, the clothes fit differently. The other thing that really sucks is like when you're actually working out and you're doing these things, like I have muscles, you just can't see them. So that's like my goal one day is to have, you actually be able to see my muscles whenever I wear, a tank top. I feel like I always notice that I am the biggest person in the room. I don't know if other people do that, but that's something I've always done. I'm always very self-conscious about it. But also, more than just looks or whatever my word is here that I'm trying to come up with. My blood work, whenever you look at it from pre GLP1 to now, you would never know it's the same person. My inflammation numbers are normal now, where they were astronomical before. So not only has it changed the food noise, changed my diet, the weight loss, changed the muscle, it has most importantly changed the inside, I guess is the best way to say it. it has changed how my body feels. My blood work is, you wouldn't know it was the same person. When it comes to a GLP-1, circling this all back, Trisha Caldwell is the family nurse practitioner that reached out to me, and she owns Farm Sourced. It's a telehealth, health and weight loss service. She reached out because she works with brides. She was a bride herself. I will say at some point when the shortage started happening in fall of 2023, I did look into going with compounding at that point because I was seeing it on TikTok, and I did a consult with one of the well-known brands companies that a friend actually uses and they recommended, and so I did the consult with them. Actually, no, I must have done it in the very beginning because I asked, but maybe before I even paid for my first actual name brand one, I asked if the medicine would interact with my arthritis medicine in any way, because it's kind of, what's my word? I can't find my words today. It is powerful. It messes with your body a lot. Strong, maybe. So I asked if it would have any effect in that, because I didn't know. And he was like, I'll have to ask one of the nurse practitioners or the doctors and get back with you on that. And I was like, oh, you're not that person? He was like, oh no, I'm just a coach. And I was like, so I am having a telehealth with someone who has not even actually had any medical training other than maybe an undergrad degree. So I did not end up going with that company. And that was the last time that I really looked into compound pharmacy options, even though it was less expensive. That really kind of freaked me out, that you would just be talking to a coach. Although not saying that they are not educated or that they couldn't do their job, I just felt like for that amount of money and for what I needed, that was not a good fit. And so I had not looked at other options. And when Trisha from Farm Sourced sent me an email in November, it actually took me about 2 weeks to respond to her because her email was long. It was so detailed, and my ADHD brain needed time to comprehend it all. And I went and looked at her website. I read her email probably 5 different days before I ever responded, because talking about weight is something that is very personal. Talking about healthcare in general is very personal. Like, I feel like I've told you all the things about me today. It sounds like I have all kinds of problems. I really don't. But I feel like it's something that's really personal. And a lot of times when I meet with brides specifically, we talk about going to try on wedding dresses. The first thing out of their mouth is that they want to wait closer to the wedding because they want to lose weight. I would say 9 out of 10 brides give me that answer. And honestly, I completely understand that. I can't sit back and say I wouldn't say the exact same thing. There also comes a time with the dress where we need to have a dress ordered by a certain date. A lot of times I will have brides say that, they want to order a different size in their dress because they expect to lose more weight before the wedding, etc. So when it comes to weddings and weight, honestly, they go hand in hand. Not only does the weight go hand in hand, but your stress levels. It's probably the most expensive day of your life, other than signing a deed on a house, and you're probably not even going to be paying that much money down on the day that you do that. The stress, along with planning and life in general, and the amount of times that you feel like you need caffeine during the day, or the amount of times you feel like you need Starbucks. Like, I always felt like I needed Starbucks. I don't need that anymore. I will say that, talking about that, I do think that my taste buds have changed since I have been on a GLP-1. When I was on Ozempic, nothing tasted sweet. I wasn't excited to eat an M&M or whatever. My trainer always posts his pictures like his breakfast of grilled chicken and broccoli with mustard. I'm like, how do you eat that And then I was to the point one day where I was making grilled chicken and broccoli, and I was like, oh, I don't really care what it tastes like today. I just need to fuel my body. And I was like, oh, that's how normal people, that's why they eat what they do, because their taste buds are different. I will say that when I switched to Zepbound, I do think I have more of a sweet tooth with Zepbound. And with Ozempic, it told me when to stop eating so that I wouldn't overeat. Whereas on Zepbound, I do not think it tells me that as quick. And so sometimes, like, I think I'm still hungry, but I'm not. And then I feel miserable afterwards because I didn't know to stop, because that is a portion that I would have normally eaten. There's definitely a lot of things like that that you find out about yourself, you find out about the medicine, and it opens your eyes significantly to all of the things. As far as GLP-1s being safe, I will say that when I first started on this, my primary care was not really familiar with them at all. They gave me no advice, no heads up, no literature. They just gave me a prescription because I asked for it. Everything I learned from TikTok, Reddit, and Facebook groups. And honestly, that's terrifying. It is what it is. There were a lot of naysayers when everything got popular, as far as it can cause thyroid cancer, or it can mess your pancreas up, all of these different things. I'm going to guess most of that is true in some form or fashion, but also obesity, and looking at, what my inflammation markers were before, what some of my other, blood work results were. That was actually probably worse than some of the other side effects that I could potentially have. Something that you have to, I don't want to say talk to your doctor about. So it's something you have to talk to your doctor about, or in my case, figure it out on your own, and then find someone that, I'm working with Trisha now, but find someone that does this every day, versus maybe just a primary care physician that might see a person every couple of days about this. I know that I see in some of the Facebook groups in Lexington that there are still physicians here that will not write prescriptions for it for whatever reason. They have their own reasons, and I think a lot of those are probably more old school than newer. But I think it's something that, for me, it was worth the risk and worth the chance to try it. It's something you can always stop. As far as me stopping it, I obviously would like to lose more weight. I have just switched to the compound version in the last few weeks and changing dosages, and there are definitely new things coming down the pipeline that eventually I will hopefully be able to try. I will probably go to a maintenance dose at some point in my life. It's just like any other medicine, like a blood pressure medicine, or I don't know what other medicines people take, cholesterol medicine, whatever, that you take your entire life. This is probably something that is going to be like that for me. I'm okay with that, because even though the weight I'm at now is not a number that I love, it's still better than where I was at 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't want to say I'm happy with it, but I'm okay with it. And if this were to be my maintenance, okay, like, I can still do a lot more now than I could 65 pounds ago. And like I said, as far as side effects, you can go down a million rabbit holes on those. I would say it's something that if you notice something is off, then that's when you really, I don't want to say freak out, but that's when you start doing something about it, because you will notice instantly when you start the medicine how it changes your body. And you will question stuff, you will go to Reddit, you will start searching things. And if at any second that you think something might be off, then that's, obviously when you want to do something about it. I will say one of the things that I like about working with Farm Source is that they're there if you have a question, but they're not overbearing in their communication. if that makes sense. Like I need my assistant to babysit me, but I don't necessarily want someone in the healthcare field to babysit me. I want to know that you're there, and I want to know that you're going to be able to respond to an email within 24 hours, ideally less than that, but that you're there if I need something. The medicines do have to be refrigerated. At least that's been my experience so far. I did purchase a like travel kit that has like ice in it because I have been traveling a lot. So I do have to be strategic whenever I travel and plan around my shots. I do have like something off of Amazon. I will link that somewhere so that you can also find that. But whenever I would get Ozempic and Zepbound, you would pick those up at the pharmacy. They would get them out of a refrigerator and hand them to you. Whereas getting it with Farm Source, it showed up at my door and it was in a cooler. It came with the needles, it came with the alcohol wipes, it came with instructions because, some of us are special. And I was really concerned with Zepbound and Ozempic. It comes with the pins where it was kind of like automatic. You weren't really giving yourself like a traditional syringe shot. With the compound, you are actually giving yourself a shot with a syringe that you have to fill with medicine and then inject it. I was concerned that I might not be able to do that. Watched a lot of videos on that, and it's not been as bad as I thought it would be. For the price difference, I will give myself a shot. If you are actually watching the video portion of this on YouTube or Facebook, you will notice that I have actually changed clothes. I had to stop the first day and go to a luncheon, and I am honestly glad that I had to stop because I have thought of literally 100 things that I feel like I forgot to say. I didn't really map out this podcast. I just kind of wanted to talk and share my experience. I did make a note of the things that I forgot that I kind of would have tied up and put a bow on this podcast. It is something that I wanted to actually make for a while. We talked about GLP-1s maybe in season 2-ish. I didn't really talk a lot about my experience then just because I feel like at that point it was still very taboo and everyone still judged it. I feel like it's less judged now. And honestly, I'm kind of the point where I finally don't care. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk on real quick. One of the side effects that I have kind of felt is a little bit of hair loss. That is completely normal because you do need to keep up your protein so much. I'm going to guess in the beginning, I did not do a great job at that. I had always wanted hair extensions anyway because I always wanted super long hair. So I now have hair extensions from Evolution. We talked about this in my podcast with her last year. I'm actually going to do a whole podcast on hair extensions because I have had a lot of questions about those and kind of want to share my experience because Evan is very reasonably priced. I think Heather Helleman is also very reasonably priced. In addition to extensions, I have also been getting PRP injections into my scalp. And I can't explain to you really the medical version of PRP. In my mind, it's basically they take your blood out, they spin it, and then they put the good stuff back in. It's the best way I can explain it. It has started to help with the growth. I've had, I think, 3 done now. And I have been going to Tranquility Aesthetics. It's on Pasadena. They are a newer company here in Lexington, so their prices are very reasonable because PRP does tend to be pricey. That is something that I wish I would have started in the beginning if I had have known to have started that in the beginning, or at least a long time ago, instead of kind of getting to the point where I'm now. And that's one of the things with the hair loss. You're probably going to be the only one that's going to notice that. I can look at pictures and see where mine is different, but just looking at it, you're probably not going to be able to tell that. I am also going to put in the show notes a couple of podcasts and accounts that I follow that are GLP-1 related that I have found I have looked to as a resource over the years. There are several really good podcasts. There are a couple of TikTokers that I say I adore them. I don't know them in real life, but I felt like I could relate to them and that they had useful information. I did create an Amazon storefront and I put up there the things that I have ordered that have been beneficial to me, like the ginger shoes, the traveling case for whenever I travel, for the pins, any of that kind of stuff. by all means, you do not have to buy it from my Amazon storefront. I just wanted to be there as a resource if you want to look at it or if you do need something. It's always wild to see how the world works, because when I got Trisha's email back in November, the timing was really not lost on me, because just recently my primary care physician had sent me to the bariatric center here in Lexington. I'm currently on my 4th primary care physician through the local hospital doctor system we have here that my insurance covers, kind of, since I started the GLP1, because they all keep leaving. They've all been great, but they keep leaving for other places, or they have opened their own concierge type business, that kind of thing. The one I have now, she's wonderful. She's probably, I don't want to say fresh out of school, but she's newer out of school. She's a PA. She is lovely. But she was like, honestly, I think that you're kind of to the point where we need to send you to someone that knows more about this than I do. And I was like, I appreciate you saying that. So she sent me to the bariatric center that's a part of this hospital system. And essentially, during that appointment, they spent the whole time telling me that I should just get surgery, weight loss surgery. If I wanted weight loss surgery, I would have done that 15 years ago. That's not why I'm sitting here today. I completely told you that that was not on the table for me for numerous reasons. So she was basically like, why are you here then? I told her why I was there, and she was like, okay, well, let me get the dietitian, the nutritionist, I'm not sure their proper terms, to come in and talk to you. And she's like, she'll do some math and put your statistics into the system and kind of tell you what you need to be eating and what you need to be doing. So that person came in the room and basically asked me again why I was there and what I was doing. And I told her. She was like, well, basically my best advice is to keep up your protein and drink your water. I spent a whole hour of my day coming in here for you to tell me that. I was really disappointed in that appointment. They made me do a follow-up appointment. I don't know why. I canceled it. There was no reason to me going back and having that exact same conversation again. So that's why I do think that working with someone who focuses primarily on weight loss drugs and GLP-1s, I think is going to be the best fit for me. I would encourage you, whoever you are working with, to make sure that that this is kind of a specialty for them, because your normal doctors and primary care, they do everything. One other thing, this has kind of been a really big learning lesson for me. Whenever people make the comment like, oh my God, you've lost weight. You look so good. You look so whatever. I'm like, what am I supposed to say to that? I find it so awkward. I have really tried to change. I don't think that I have said that to people, especially like people that I wasn't super close to. I've really tried to be careful in not congratulating people, but commenting on other people's appearance or their life, basically. I don't know what to say to people to that. I'm like, thanks, I spent a lot of money on it. That's been a really eye-opening lesson for me, because I don't like having those conversations with people. I feel like a lot of other people probably don't like having that conversation with people. I have tried to be very cautious of what I'm saying. Another thing, since I recorded the first part and started taking notes of the things I wanted to say, one of the biggest things that I found in the beginning that I was failing at was being prepared when I left the house and having snacks with me. I feel like, if you have children, you probably have snacks with you all the time. I did not carry snacks with me. That's kind of when I would go through the drive-through, or I felt like I needed to treat myself to something. I do carry protein bars with me or nuts or something with me now, because, in Lexington, you might think it's going to take you 30 minutes to do an errand, and it could be 3 hours later. I definitely try to be more prepared whenever I leave the house now. I have found, for me personally, the best snacks that I can find when I'm out, if I'm not prepared, are the Starbucks protein boxes. There's like an egg one, there's a cheese, like fruit, those kind of things. They're stupid expensive for what you get, but that's the best thing I have found. If you have found better options that you can get on a whim, please let me know. I would love to know what those are. But saying all of that, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or want to know anything else about my journey on a GLP-1. I think it's very trial and error for every single person. I will say, going forward, our podcast will drop every other week on Wednesdays. I have the next 4 or 5 already recorded. I just wanted to kind of get this one out and Trisha's episode out toward the beginning of the year, because I know this is kind of when you are buying dresses. This is when you are working on your fitness goals. You've made New Year's resolutions. I had planned for this to be out weeks ago, but it's been a little busy around here, which is always a great thing. Coming up this season, so far, the next couple of episodes, this is not in order, but these are the ones that are coming. We have Allie from The Social Edit, and she is going to be talking about content creation. We've got Logan from Couch Creative Media. He is going to be talking about videography and talking a little bit about how, he is working now with content creators, because that's something new since the last time we talked to a videographer. We've got Taylor from the Manchester Hotel. We're going to talk a little bit about the hotel, what they offer, and their new event space. We've got Liz Toombs. She is an interior designer, and she's going to share a little bit about like merging two homes together as you're getting married and things for you to register for. We've definitely got a lot of things coming up. Like I said, it will drop every other Wednesday. So be sure and like on Instagram, Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Those kind of things are always the best things that you can do for any type of small business, is to follow them on social media. I hope you have found this episode somewhat beneficial. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my journey.
Wedding planning doesn't have to be overwhelming, and you don't have to do it alone. If you want guidance you can trust, I would love to help. At Simply Love Studio, I offer free wedding consultations where we talk through your vision, your budget, and what steps make the most sense for you. There's no pressure, no obligations, no catches, no gimmicks, just honest advice and support to help you move forward with confidence. You can schedule your free consult anytime at simplylovestudio.com, and I promise you'll walk away with clarity and a plan.